controllable by man. And then ethics, like in the medieval times, were basically NL, natural law ethics. They basically borrowed this from Catholicism. So ethics were presumed to be absolute, non-changing, because they're divine. But, I like most of these ideas. They were, as a response to Catholicism, some of their inherent ideas were bad. They basically spoiled it. The carbuncular science doesn't work. Ultimately, just as I suggested, Protestantism has a problem with science. Science has a problem done in the carbuncular Enlightenment way with God. God is, in a certain sense, a part of nature, and if they're not willing to acknowledge it, there's a fundamental problem there. And ultimately, the modernist Enlightenment movement died sometime in the 19th century, in the 1800s. And what you got was a new amalgam that really sprang from the ashes of modernity. And I see much less that's socially or, ontologically redeeming in modernism, in postmodernism. And it's basically where I view us today. And it is sort of a Catholic response to modernity becoming postmodernity. First off, the belief in God is outright denied everywhere. Again, see its incipient characteristics in modernity. You're starting to deny that God has a role in science, or a hand in science, in creation. Starting to deny, in modernity, ideas about having religious states. You get ideas like separation of church and state, which is not in the Constitution, but was a Jeffersonian idea, a very Enlightenment idea. Culture should be a little more secular. So you're reducing the sphere of God in modernity. By postmodernity, it's basically assumed out of hand. If you watch one of these popular youngster late night shows, it's just the belief of God is basically denied. The sphere for God is next to nothing. Now, this is the big one that I find interesting, and this is why when I have Catholic friends that call what we're seeing now modernistic, that guy's a modernist. No, he's a postmodernist. This is the big characteristic. Man, by the way, postmodernists don't have concepts of good and evil. They presume, to borrow Nietzsche's term, that we've moved beyond good and evil because of relativism. But they presume, even though they don't have terms like good and evil anymore, they use them still. It's another contradiction. That man himself is evil. For modernists, at least, they liked humankind. They saw we're special. There's a divine spark in us, right? Our ratio. They still had all that. They reacted to teleology, but they still thought, we're special. We're the ones that can kind of control nature. We're the ones that can do controlled experiments. We're the ones that come out of the state of nature into societies, civil societies, which have many good things. But the postmoderns, they believe man is, go watch, there's a show called like Whale Wars or something, where they say, oh, man is a plague on the earth. That's the postmodern view. It's absolute garbage, of course, but they are, I believe there's an outcropping here. It stems from, if you don't believe in God, if he's altogether denied, you have nothing but, odious loathsomeness in your heart for man. So man, well, is viewed as a good thing, perfectible even, maybe you're having a dalliance with hubris in the modern period. Absolutely evil in our day. And animals, nature, are presumed, again, even though you don't have moral good and evil anymore, nature is presumed good. It's natural, they'll tell you, right? We're evil, it's a plague on the earth to have men and women, but nature is a good thing. And animals just do what they do. They're not laden by a false sense of modernity, by a false sense of morality, or by a false sense of being above natural things. They just are. That's what they'll tell you. It's garbage. But and then relativism is assumed, even though they have all these absolute viewpoints, you won't admit to it. They have this absolute viewpoint that there are no absolutes, which is another contradiction. But again, that kind of stems from modernity and the tensions, the failed inarticulability of a natural law that allegedly grows out of a Protestant tradition.
What is that last word on the left?
Oh, assumed here?
No, on the left.
Relativism.
Relative.
The idea that there is no absolute moral right and wrong. Some will tell you no logical right or wrong. 2 and 2 might be 3 or 5. Principle of non-contradiction might be nothing or not necessary. So we're in the postmodern period. It's not the same, you know. Jefferson was not a postmodern man. Similarly, if you were to take a characteristic thinker of our day, they are not a modernist. You know, too often, you know, Catholic priests will get up and they'll be decrying a lot of these 4 things, and I say that's great, stick it to them. But these are not modernist problems; they're postmodernist problems. Modernity had its own problems, but it had a lot of virtues. There's nothing, almost nothing good from postmodernity. So what's the solution? I argue most of this stems from that changeover from medieval times, when things aren't seen to be ordered, then man becomes a relativistic law, right? If things aren't ordered and all of this isn't a great sort of divine playing out of things, there's no telos, then of course people are going to start doing bad things and covering for it later. So our current pope says the greatest danger in the world, I think it was his first year as pope, he was asked, you know, he didn't give some populisty answer. He said relativism. And I think that's when I knew he was the right guy for the job. That wasn't a token answer. It was a thoughtful answer. Relativism. And he got a little more relativist in the modern period, but in the postmodern period, things have just fallen apart. And I say the Catholic Church is the solution, but people have to be willing to know how and why. And you know, going to classes like this is really, I hope, instructive toward that end. Okay, any questions in closing here?
Doesn't it come down to how the various ages define everything? This is what rolls through my head, is how we're defining marriage, how we're defining abortion and child-rearing these days. You know, it's just how we keep thinking, oh, we're being so modern, okay, but we're really not in how things get defined.
Well, if you look, I mean, just to show you that I'm not just picking up on this, take time period by time period. I mean, in Augustine's day, you know, early Middle Ages, you know, basically you raised a family and made everyone, I mean, I didn't live there, but everything was directly ordered back to God. Every minute of the day, people had failings like they do now. But the express purpose of living was pleasing God. So you're defining having a family, you know, where God is writ large. And then take, you know, even late medieval, you notice some of this even in studying a lot of Augustine, like I did when I was in Rome, and then crossing over and studying Aquinas. Even for Aquinas, I mean, who's actually a greater doctor of the church, he had more of a life than Augustine had, or Augustine, however you say it. People always correct me when I say Augustine. He had more of a life. God's writ a little bit smaller. Then there's a big jump. I mean, just in terms of how people define things, God is a smaller part of it, where if he's truly the ultimate end of all of my strivings, then I should be thinking about him in all of my strivings. That becomes a little, probably more like only one font size down for Thomas. But yes, you define your day-to-day things and goals and hopes and aspirations like that. Big jump down in modernity, but still, you know, if you read Jefferson and Madison writing to each other, it's still all over the place, but then it's just missing from modernity. And the definition of a family, yes, it's all about definitions. You know that this is my approach, because you're doing metaphysics. The definition of a family is absolutely without God. The definition of procreation, the act of procreation now, has nothing to do with God or family rearing. And we already talked about how having a family is strictly taken to be incidental to you're a member of being a species, you're a member as one of the species. So I agree 100%. It's all about how each age defines things and how, but not how they're laboring to do it, how they presuppose things are defined would be my caveat. But yeah, I'm with you.
I mean, I wanted to correct, you saying earlier, in the late part of your lecture about like, they don't presume to be part, that nature has a part of God, has God responsible for it. You're correct that nature implies there is a God. If you think part of it, I was thinking, the way you try to use that part, it's not pantheist, it's
Yeah, it
theist,
sounds
like,
a little
yeah,
pantheist.
the wording's important. Another thing, isn't it, was there anything favorable Mr. Locke said about the Catholic Church? Or anything, or did all were they really die hard at that time?
Oh yeah. He wrote lots of
Like, was
specific
there anything
stuff.
anything positive about the Catholic faith that you knew you can deny as being a natural law or
No, but there's evidence that, I mean, he's a smart guy, he's a genius. There's evidence that,
how Montague, how
I forget where it is. There's a guy called Ed Fazer who's actually taught at Loyola when I was there. He writes a lot on this, how he has a book called
a scientist or a lawyer, law theorist?
he's a philosopher, a Catholic philosopher, and he says, he wrote the book for the One World Thinker series on Locke, and it's really interesting. I got it, not knowing what I was going to get. He just says, look, here's Locke's epistemology, the way his view of knowledge, and it's this carbuncular stuff and empiricism, and it doesn't meet up with his natural law political theology, so thank God for him, because he gave the inspirational thoughts for a great political philosophy, but it doesn't match up with his other thought.
Who made Trump but anyway, who coined Trump?
I think like Thomas Hooker or something like that, some 16th or early 17th century dude.
You have a point about social science, and I'm a econ post-psychedelic nature. Have you ever bothered to talk about the economic thinkers like David Hume or
Scottish Enlightenment out now.
Yeah, those people are responsible for changing the terms of debates because they also refer to the Enlightenment idea of the element designer and then cut them out when we went straight to capitalism.
Which is true. That's true. I mean, there are lots of...
Unbridled.
It's Scottish Enlightenment, yeah. It's a different topic. And I don't think it's... I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think the Scottish Enlightenment... I think it's mostly responsible for good things more than bad things. I mean...
That's true.
The critiques of capitalism are a dime a dozen. I'm generally laudatory, but whatever. So anyway, if there are no other questions, thanks for coming out for these. They've been good, and the questions have been instructively good, which is not always a given. So thanks again, and see yourselves home safely tonight. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.